Okay, so from yesterday, what we want you to do is think of what two reactions did we talk about, and I get it. This stuff isn't the most interesting aspect to study, and maybe anything in science maybe isn't the most interesting aspect to study. But here we are. Okay, let's just keep moving forward. The two types of reactions that we had discussed. Well, photosynthesis is a rather vague term because the light reactions, which require what? Which require sunlight, okay? We're on about 114. And with that, okay, plants continually need to make energy for themselves, so they can't do it all during the day. They have a Kelvin cycle, and that might be what, do you think? We said if you have light reactions, chances are you're going to have what? Dark reactions then as well. And we had left off with talking about the different types of pigments. And that's going to start changing here probably in the next, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks. I think we had mentioned that yesterday. Some people, they really prefer, they like the fall time of the season. One, maybe it's not so hot. Two, the bugs and insects are on their way out for the winter season. And then three, you just look outside and you see just the different colors that we see amongst the tree line. Okay, so everyone's going to have their own idea of whether they do or do not like the fall season. I think for some people to say no, I don't like the fall season because we know what's coming up next, winter. Okay, so and then snow excites some people, maybe others not so much. Okay, so with that, we left off with the chloroplast pigment. So on page 115 then, located in the membrane of thylakoids are several pigments, the most important which are called chlorophylls. That was from last chapter. Chlorophylls are your different types of pigments. We see green for the most part, so why are the leaves green? Because as the sun shines down, okay, it goes through a prism, and that breaks up light into its different spectra, okay? So then when we see these green leaves, what are the leaves doing? They are absorbing everything but the color green, because we interpret that in our eyes. That's why the leaves are green then, okay? There are several different types of chlorophylls. The two most common types are known as chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. For instance, one of the things you may learn, well, not may learn, but for those of you who go on to take human anatomy and physiology, we're doing the digestive system. We're slowly starting to wrap that up. And probably in a person's diet, in my opinion, behind carbohydrates being the most important part of a person's diet, second would probably be proteins, okay? So with that, there is no one universal enzyme that breaks down all proteins. Pepsin is probably the most common one, but yet there are other enzymes like enterokinase. Now those are different types of mechanisms that you don't need to know anything about, but my point is neither one of them enzymes breaks down all dietary proteins. So we have both of them. So with that, there is no universal, what we would call chlorophylls that the plants have. They have both A and B, and this is why. Okay. As figure 6.5 shows, chlorophyll A absorbs less blue light but more red light than chlorophyll B absorbs. Neither chlorophyll A nor chlorophyll B absorbs much green light. Instead, they allow green light to be reflected, and that's what we see or transmitted. For this reason, leaves and other plant structures that contain large amounts of chlorophyll look green. We had just discussed that. Only chlorophyll A is directly involved in light reactions of photosynthesis. Chlorophyll B assists chlorophyll A in capturing light energy, and therefore chlorophyll B is called an accessory pigment. Okay? And another aspect, maybe an accessory organ in digestion. You're going to have your main ones, your stomach, and your two intestines, small and large, in that order. Those are your primary digestive organs. We also have secondary ones, those that kind of aid the breakdown. You can't live without them, but they aid in digestion. And just for curiosity's sake, who thinks they can name an accessory organ for digestion? Don't make this too hard. I mean, you are making this too hard. Just say something. It lies about right here, in between your stomach, in between how it sits in there. If we were playing the $100,000 pyramid, had to give a clue. You fry things in a what? In a pan. So what sounds like pan? Pancreas. That's an accessory organ. So what else maybe? Rhymes with river. Now you got a liver. You can't live without your liver. And then when you do something, let's say you make fun of someone and you're a hypocrite and you say, man, you got a lot of gall. It's funny, I'm looking here, but then you am, which is fine. Sorry, I'm picking on you. I'm not going to do that anymore. Yeah, your gallbladder. Okay. So you have accessory organs of digestion. You also could have accessory pigments then as well. Okay. By absorbing colors that chlorophyll A cannot absorb, the accessory pigments enable plants to capture more of the energy and light. In the leaves of a plant, the chlorophylls are generally much more abundant and therefore mask the colors of other pigments. But in the non-photosynthetic parts of a plant, such as fruits and flowers, the colors of the other pigments may be quite visible. And that's why you're going to see different types of apples, oranges. Of course, you're going to have a variety of colors then. Okay? So I'm briefly going to read on page 116. We didn't get started as quickly as what I would have wanted, but that's okay. Okay? On page 116. Once pigments in the chloroplast have captured light energy, the light energy then must be converted to chemical energy. Okay? For us as humans and mammals, when we break down energy, we had those two reactions up on the board. We take carbohydrates or sugars and break them down in this organelle. What is it? Starts with an M. See, I thought you said it. It's an organelle, the mitochondria. Is that what you said? No? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we break those down. Now plants do something a little different. Okay, the chemical energy is temporarily stored in ATP. We don't need to know that other compound. During those reactions, O2 is given off. Just the opposite of us. We need to take in O2. The chlorophylls and carotenoids are grouped in clusters of a few hundred pigment molecules in the thylakoid membrane. Each cluster of pigment molecules and the proteins that the pigment molecules are embedded in are referred to collectively as a photosystem. Okay? So what happens is what they're trying to illustrate on the bottom very shortly or very concisely is what a photosystem is. The types of photosystems are known as photosystem 1 and 2. And basically what we see happening is we're taking in light, and that energy then is transferred from that sunlight to push that electron along. One of your vocab terms was called the electron transport chain. And this is what's happening. As the leaves are absorbing that sunlight, it presses that electron along because besides carbon dioxide, what else do plants need? It comes from the ground. The roots take it in. Water. That water gets split. And when that happens, it gives off electrons, and that gets pressed along in this photosystem 1 and 2. Can we describe this in the book? Maybe we can. I'm willing to bet there's something that we can watch that would explain it better
on the information that we just read. We will continue with this again on Thursday, because we'll be in Del Rapids for cross-country meet tomorrow. It'll either be something for you to work on tomorrow or an activity. I don't think we're going to make it to the activity. We'll have something for you to work on instead. Yes? And that is how many? 1, 2, okay. 1, 2, 3, and who's the fourth one? Oh, okay. I didn't know you pointed to Will. Okay.
We will. What time do you leave? Okay. Well, you might catch a little bit of this. So, all right. We will address this then at a later time. But anyway, this a short segment of video deals with photosynthesis. So I'll go ahead and get that rolling. This will take us to the rest of the class period. So, just hold up. Playing catch with one another or what? Is that a lateral?
This tree has grown from a tiny seed to stand almost 100 metres tall. To build such a massive structure requires the production of tons of organic material, and it needs a vast amount of energy. The immediate source of energy in the plant's cells is glucose. As this breaks down, the chemical energy released allows a small molecule, ADP, to combine with phosphate to form ATP. This high-energy molecule diffuses through the cell, releasing small amounts of usable energy for all kinds of cellular reactions as it breaks back down to ADP and phosphate. If this sounds familiar, it's because it's a key part of cell respiration, the process that powers the cells of all living organisms. The complex series of reactions in this process happen in mitochondria. No surprise that we find these cell powerhouses in all eukaryotic cells. Living cells need energy all the time to function and remain alive. We know that animals get glucose from the nutrients they eat. But where do plants get glucose from? To understand where plants get glucose from, we need to be clear about what glucose is exactly. A single glucose molecule contains 6 carbon atoms, 6 oxygen atoms, and 12 hydrogen atoms. It's written as C6H12O6. Glucose is one of the many carbohydrates in plants, organic substances made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Since plants don't have any outside supply of glucose, they must somehow produce it in their cells from substances available in their surroundings. To see what an extraordinary feat this is, let's look at the transformation. The key materials they use are carbon dioxide from the air and water taken in through the plant's roots. Carbon dioxide has 1 carbon atom bound to 2 oxygen atoms. A water molecule has 2 hydrogen atoms bound to a single oxygen atom, H2O. From these simple inorganic molecules, plants create complex organic molecules. Before we get into just how they do this, we need to review some basic principles about energy flow in living organisms. In any living cell, thousands of chemical reactions are happening at any moment. Some consume energy, others release energy. The ones that release energy are called exergonic reactions. Ex as in out, erg as in energy. In such reactions, there's more chemical energy in the reactants than the products, so energy is released. Reactions that consume energy are called endergonic reactions. End as in inside, and again erg as in energy. In these reactions, there's more chemical energy in the products than the reactants, so energy has to be provided. In a living cell, exergonic reactions typically provide the energy for endergonic reactions. We say the reactions are coupled. For example, glucose can break down to release energy, which is used to build up supplies of ATP. Glucose production in plants is a very complex process. We'll look at the main steps, keeping in mind some basic points. Every step is catalysed by its own enzyme. The carbon atoms in glucose come from carbon dioxide. The hydrogen atoms come from water. And since many endergonic, that is, energy-using reactions are involved, the plant needs an energy supply. That energy is supplied by sunlight, which is why the building or synthesis of glucose is called photosynthesis. The leaves of a plant are its solar panels. Their thin, spreading structure is an adaptation to harvest the maximum amount of sunlight. Light energy is captured in a very specific place. Most of the leaf's inner cells contain structures called chloroplasts. We can see chloroplasts here clearly, the green oval-shaped organelles. The chloroplast wall is a double membrane structure. The inner membrane is folded back and forth to form stacks of flattened discs. These stacks are called grana, and each disc is a thylakoid, a Greek word meaning looks like a bag. The thylakoid membranes are where the action is. They contain a complex material, chlorophyll, which has the ability to absorb light energy. The absorbed energy kick-starts the photosynthesis process in the grana, triggering several linked chemical reactions. Inside the thylakoids, the energy splits water molecules into hydrogen ions, electrons, and oxygen. Since oxygen is not used in any photosynthesis reactions, it's given off as oxygen gas. The hydrogen ions are very reactive, bonding with carrier molecules called NADP to form NADPH. The splitting of water molecules also makes possible another reaction. The released electrons provide the energy for ADP to bond with a phosphate group and form ATP. Remember that ATP is the cell's portable energy carrier, and we'll see in a moment where the energy gets used in photosynthesis. This first part of photosynthesis is known as the light-dependent stage because without light energy, it won't happen. Let's review the inputs and outputs. The input materials are water, the uncharged form of the carrier NADP, ADP and phosphate groups. The other essential inputs are light energy and chlorophyll. The outputs are ATP, carrying stored energy, and NADPH, the charged hydrogen carrier molecule. The other output from the splitting of water is oxygen. Some of it will be used in cell respiration in the plant's own cells. The rest will diffuse out into the atmosphere where it's available for other organisms to use. Oxygen is not used in the photosynthesis process in any way. It's a byproduct. However, the other outputs, ATP and NADPH, become essential inputs for the second stage of photosynthesis. The second stage of photosynthesis happens in the chloroplast stroma. It's known as the light-independent stage because none of the reactions involved use light energy. This doesn't mean that they happen sometime later or in the dark. Stage 2 depends on the products of stage 1, and these must be used immediately, as soon as they're produced. This second stage is known as the Calvin cycle because the products of some of the reactions are recycled. The inputs to the cycle are carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and energy-rich ATP and NADPH from the light-dependent stage. The outputs are ADP and phosphate and the uncharged carrier NADP. These products are recycled back into the light-dependent stage to be recharged in light-dependent reactions. The other products are glucose, now containing the chemical energy transformed from light energy, and water. Let's now look at the two stages together. In the light-dependent stage, light energy captured by chlorophyll is used to split water into oxygen and hydrogen. The oxygen is not used in photosynthesis, but hydrogen does take part in the light-independent stage, where carbon dioxide is combined with the hydrogen to produce glucose and water. The process of photosynthesis as a whole can be summarised like this. Carbon dioxide plus water, in the presence of light and chlorophyll, produces glucose and oxygen, with some water reformed. The process can also be written showing the formulae for the inputs and outputs. Equations like this must always balance, showing the same number of atoms on each side. The numbers highlighted show us that 6 carbon dioxide and 12 water molecules are used to produce 1 molecule of glucose. In the process, 6 molecules of water and 6 molecules of oxygen are also produced.
Okay, we'll continue with that at a later time. And notice that I had misspoke. I had always looked at the advantage of knowing the light reactions, of course, the sunlight, which I don't think anyone would disagree with. That makes sense. And then that the idea of the Calvin cycle or light independent reactions, not necessarily that they take place at night. They can, but they more so need the energy from the light dependent reactions. So just like what we had read, the light reactions mean sunlight comes down. The chloroplasts absorb that energy and something gets split. Oxygen from the hydrogen. Okay? So that water molecule gets split. Do plants need oxygen? No, they don't. So since plants don't use oxygen, that's why that is given off then. Okay? So what we see happening then is at the end of that stage, the output then is ATP. What was input? Sunlight and water. Along with within the chloroplast. Okay, that was on the input stage of the light reactions. The molecule gets split. The outputs then is minutes or 12:30, just go through the lunch line and you've got your plate of carbohydrates and proteins and maybe put salad dressing on, some fats on there, myself. So everything you need to drive your chemical reaction. Well, plants can't do that. So this complex set of reactions provides them with the food that they need and building the blocks for glucose. Okay, so like I said, we will either have an activity for you or something to hang on to, something to work on, and that will be handed to Mr. Deitch, and will be given instructions at that time. So that's it until Thursday for some of you, and Friday for others who are gone. Pick up with this at that time.